that okay, everybody? See the bottom of the board.
I think the bottom is slightly cut off. I don't know how.
That better?
Yeah, that should be fine. We can see the dot at the bottom. Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, happy Sabbath. So what I'm going to talk about today is it's going to be about civil rights law, religious liberty over equality and discrimination, and what that looks like today and how I think it might progress in the near future. You'll need to do your own research and studies on the following Supreme Court cases that I mentioned. I'm just going to briefly talk about them. Due to them being connected to the presentation title. Does anyone know what RFRA might stand for? So it stands for Religious Freedom Restoration Act. I'm going to put the date when it was put in. Pen's not great, sorry. Anybody heard of this? What I'm going to do as I go through the study, I'm going to refer to it. I'm going to shorten it. So basically, this is pronounced by being called RFRA, like that. So we keep saying Religious Freedom Restoration Act. So RFRA is a religious federal civil law, particularly for religious minorities and disfavored faith groups, that applies across all federal statutes, regulations, and other law. Please stop me if I'm going too fast or if you have questions. So RFRA doesn't sort of what it does not. It doesn't predetermine winners and losers. It just promises a religious claimant a day in court. It should allow all persons to practice their faith or no faith without discrimination or interference from the government, unless they can kind of show or they can have a good reason to do so. So RFRA is a bit like the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Is a bit like the First Amendment of the Constitution. Does anyone want to tell me what the First Amendment of the Constitution is? Or read it out to me? You can Google it. Or move on. No one's.
Okay, so First Amendment of the United States Constitution protects the rights to freedom of religion and freedom of expression from government interference.
Thank you, Deb. So how did RFRA come about? The RFRA was a response of a Supreme Court case decision. I'm going to put up here some Supreme Court cases. The Supreme Court case called Employment 1990. As I say, you have to do some research yourself if you want to. It's called Employment Division. I just put D there versus Smith. I won't go into this case, but many saw this case as a bad rule and that lessened I thought I was on mute then. That lessened the Constitution protection for religious freedom. So it basically changed the standard for the First Amendment's guarantee of free exercise of religion. In the wake of this US Supreme Court 1990 decision, this one here, the Employment Division Department versus Smith. It was brought about by Native American, an alcohol and drugs counsellor. The case held that the state could not deny unemployment benefit to a person fired for violating the state prohibition on the use of a drug called peyote, even though the use of the drug was part of a religious ritual. So a little side point here, although the state has the power to accommodate otherwise illegal acts performed in pursuit of religious beliefs, they don't have to, they're not required to do so. So that's what that case was about. And as I just mentioned, the result of that case brought about the Religious Freedom Restoration Act in 1993. It was one of the broadest coalitions in recent political history, with 66 religious and civil liberty groups, including Christians, Jews, Muslims, humanists, and secular civil liberties organisations coming together.
Sorry, Natalie.
Questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi. Yeah.
Hi, Natalie. This case, please could you just briefly summarize what the case was about and what the issue was and what was the outcome of the case?
Yeah, I'll probably go into the outcome, but basically, like I said, it was a case about an Native Americans using. One second, I'll go back to the top of my notes.
Wasn't it a kind of a drug, like not a drug? Yeah, class.
It was what? Sorry, CG?
I said, wasn't it kind of like a drug, like marijuana?
Yeah, that's right. And you've got your camera on, I think. Oh no, it's Deborah. Yeah, it was, and they were using it for religious rituals and stuff like that. But the Employment Division Department, they basically said that it was not allowed, but it was part of their religious ritual, so it was meant to be allowed. Let me just see if I've got more about it in my notes as I go down. So like I said, Curtis, the case held that the state could not deny unemployment benefit. It was about unemployment benefit for the person who was fired. So Native American counsellor was fired for using peyote. So the state could not deny unemployment benefit for that person who was fired, violating the state prohibition on the use of the drug called peyote, like I said, even though the use of the drug was part of religious rituals. So I think it was a breach of their religious freedom, really. So that's why the RFRA was brought about. It was a response of this case brought by the Native American. Does that answer your question, Curtis?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I'm just Googling what peyote is.
Yeah.
You mean pot? Like
Probably is. I don't know what it is. I know it's a drug they use in their rituals, the Native Americans. I'm not sure what it actually is. That's why it's best to go, if you're interested, go into the cases a little bit more deeply yourselves.
Sure. I guess
But if you find out, let me know.
Sure. I was questioning the result of that, like what we think about that.
So as the result of this case brought about that act, which just basically strengthened the First Amendment, I would say, of the Constitution. So basically, people have, I know it's connected to a drug, but they have a right to, using the RFRA, the Religious Freedom Act, they have a right to do what they want in their religious practice without being sacked by their employer, really. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, I get what the outcome is. I was questioning whether that's valid, basically. If people can,
But would it not be valid?
If people can do what they want under the umbrella of it's my religion.
Yeah, exactly. That's, I think, what I'm going to talk about. So hold on, and if you've got more questions, interrupt me again.
Sure, thank you.
You know what I mean? What, sorry?
I said, sure, thank you.
Okay.
Can I just summarize that case, or at least what I understood so far, is that it's because they were using a drug that was illegal in that state for their religious services, and they both worked for the drug rehabilitation clinic. So they said that it was
Counsellors, alcohol and drug counsellors.
yeah, that was obviously violating state law to ingest that drug, first of all, because it's not supposed to be, it wasn't legal, and that, yeah, obviously their employment as well. So I guess that's where Kirsty's question's coming from. But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Emma. So RFRA was sponsored by many representatives, including the now Senator Chuck Schumer, and passed by an overwhelming bipartisan majority of Congress in 1993. It was signed into law. So this was a response. First, I'll just put response. It was signed into law obviously in 1993. By then President Bill Clinton. In its signing remarks, Clinton noted what a broad coalition of Americans working together across ideological and religious lines. He's basically saying many who would normally have different views on many issues have come together. We're in concord to bring in religious freedom. So all individuals can have freedom no matter what their faith they believe or what they believe. Originally, the federal law was intended to apply to federal governments and local states. However, a few years down the road, another court case said it was unconstitutional. This case was by a court decision of City of Bernie. Here, it was in 1997. Versus Flores, I think I would say it, which ruled that the RFRA only applied to federal government, not states. As I said, this case said that RFRA was unconstitutional. So if you want to go and look more into Bernie versus Flores, then please do so. Or you can Google it now if you want to, but I think it was to do with religious buildings and stuff like that. But I'm just bringing up different cases that are arguing about RFRA being unconstitutional in the states. However, today, 70 states have made their own RFRA, and it continues to be applied by many states. For instance, a case that rose in 2012, which went on to be a very important case for this movement to notice. Does anyone know what that might be? What case that might be?
When was the date?
It went on to be it started kind of 2012, but it was a very important case for us in 2014. So it was Burwell versus Hobby Lobby.
Oh,
I'm just going to put, does anyone want to explain to me what that Hobby Lobby case was about? Burwell versus Hobby Lobby. It was an evangelical Christian business. Case arose in 2012. So I'm just going to put 2012 here because it rose. We should note that it rose because, well, basically it struck down Obamacare's contraceptive mandate. Does anyone know what that is? Obamacare's contraceptive mandate? In 2012. So basically the Obamacare mandate would have meant that the evangelical Christian owners of Hobby Lobby business would have had to pay $475 million in penalties per year for not providing the abortion pill to employees, which they say violated their Religious Freedom Restoration Act, their right to religious freedom. Does it ring a bell? Hobby Lobby?
Yes, the name does.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. With this case, the Supreme Court granted a landmark victory for religious liberty, ruling that the individuals do not lose their religious freedom when they open a family business. The court ruled 5-4 favour for David and Barbara Green and the family business Hobby Lobby, ruling they do not have to violate the faith and pay severe fines. So as I mentioned, Hobby Lobby was meant to provide and facilitate contraceptive pill in their health insurance plan, which they said was against their religious convictions or pay severe fines, basically, due to the Obamacare's contraceptive mandate of 2012. The Greens argued that this substantially bears in their religious beliefs in violation of the federal law, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. And in an opinion by Justice Aliso at the time, the court stated the plain terms of RFRA makes it perfectly clear that Congress does not discriminate against men and women who wish to run their business as for-profit corporations in the manner required by their religious beliefs. Our responsibility is to enforce RFRA as written and under the standard that RFRA prescribes. The contraceptive mandate is unlawful. Basically, that case was turning back the Obamacare contraceptive mandate, as I said, which was about abortion. So we know that 2014, 2012 is very important dates in our movement. And we see here contraceptive mandate being overturned, which was about abortion pill. And we know that 2014 was a Sunday law. In this case, Ruth Bader Ginsburg in her dissent expressed concern that Hobby Lobby could lead to RFRA being used to permit discrimination used against minority groups. Some critics of RFRA say it was created to discriminate based on sexual orientation and spells disaster for the LGBTQ+ rights. And RFRA was just a trump card for religious people to use in court. This was a case for a victory for religious liberty. Anyone got any questions?
Yeah, sorry, Natalie, can you just reiterate what our Ruth Bader Ginsburg said about it?
In her dissent, she said, she expressed concern that Hobby Lobby could lead to RFRA being the Religious Freedom Restoration Act being used to permit discrimination against minority groups.
Okay.
Sorry, Natalie, forgive me. I'm struggling to follow the thread that's going on.
Okay.
Would you mind just refreshing a bit, because it's involved a lot of reading? I've struggled.
Yeah.
Yeah, and go over the case, the 1999 Berber v. Flores. I didn't get what that was about either. Sorry, I think it's quite fast for the information.
So the RFRA, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, it was a response of the 1990 case by Employment Division Department and Smith. Curtis and Emma also explained about that being about the drug counsellors and alcohol counsellors using drug peyote, and they were fired and then they weren't given an unemployment benefit due to them using the drug, but it was part of their religious ritual, so they said that it was wrong. So that case brought a response to bring in the religious, because we had the First Amendment then, don't forget. So that case was a response to bring in the Religious Freedom Restoration Act in 1993, which was brought about by Bill Clinton, signed into law, and obviously that was a coalition of many different faiths, Muslims, Jews, they all came together to make sure there was freedom for religion, so you can do what you want in regard to your own conscience of your beliefs. And then we had the next case, which was...
So Natalie, sorry, are you saying that's a good thing or a bad thing, or you're not saying what it is? You're just giving us the facts.
I think you'll understand as I go along with...
Okay.
Yeah. So the burning of floors one, it's about religion as well. It's quite a complicated case, so that's why I'm not elaborating on it, because I don't think I quite understand that case myself, but it is to do with RFRA. So it's best to, they said it was unconstitutional, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, to put this about in states, not just federal government, but in the states, to have that RFRA law. So that's what that one was about, 1997. And then in 2014, we had the Hobby Lobby versus Hobby Lobby, which we know is an important case. It was part of the message of the Midnight Cry, where Elder Tess mentioned Hobby Lobby. And we know, as I said, before 2014, with the Hobby Lobby case with Bearwell, we had it affecting the basically struck down Obama's contraceptive mandate. So this is just cases that are using the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. And sometimes as we go along and we see more cases, you'll see that it's kind of winning over equality. So it's that freedom of religion over, you know, equality. Any questions?
No, thank you for the summary. I think I'm following what's going on better.
What, sorry, Curtis?
I just said thank you. I'm following what's going on a bit better now.
So, and then we had, as I said, we had Ruth Bader Ginsburg in her dissent. She expressed that it was could cause problems in the future, the Hobby Lobby using this Religious Freedom Restoration Act to discriminate against minority groups. And then we had critics saying that it could definitely discriminate based on sexual orientation and spelt as acts for LGBTQ rights. Back in 2014, the critics of Bearwell and Hobby Lobby predicted that the decision would open floodgates to a host of novel claims, transforming religious freedom, which is what this is, from a shield of protecting religious minorities into a sword of imposing Christian values in an area of abortion, contraception, and gay rights. Do you get that?
Can you just read that again, please?
Yeah. So in 2014, when this case came about, Bearwell versus Hobby Lobby, a lot of critics said, or they kind of predicted, didn't they, that the decision would open floodgates to a host of novel claims transforming religious freedom from a shield for protecting religious minorities into a sword of imposing Christian values in the area of abortion, contraception, and gay rights. So it's basically, I'm reading this as it's saying, you know, religious freedom over equality. So as long as we can, you know, do what we want in our business, or do you know, it doesn't matter if it hurts someone else or if it's discrimination to minorities. Any questions? Just a side point, in RFRA in 2015, put it down here. Mike Pence, we all know who he is, don't we? Who is he, Cedra?
He's the vice president when Trump was president.
So he signed in 2015, he signed into law a RFRA, Religious Freedom Restoration Act, in Indiana. When he was in charge there. So he signed it into law, citing he was citing the Supreme Court case Hobby Lobby. It became the 20th state to enact RFRA law. This signing caused outrage. His opponent said it would discriminate against LGBTQ in the name of religion. there was such an outrage at the time that he was forced to amend it, which prevented the law from eroding human rights. Any question?
Hi, Natalie, it's Brian.
Right.
So basically, this act is something that's used by the religious organizations, obviously lobbied what would go into this act. And it's used to defend whatever religion you come from. Doesn't matter whether you're Christian or Muslim, whatever it is.
Atheist, yeah, I would imagine. Anything, yeah.
So I'm beginning to see now that, you know, it's really not a good thing, because it can be used against other people, like minorities and whatever it may be. So I'm just looking, and then whatever you do in life can be used for good or bad. And I'm just thinking of us as Seventh-day Adventists. We want protection to be able to observe the Sabbath as well. So we would be covered under that act, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, you know.
Yeah, that's right. But I think it's the way it's being used that is actually the problem.
Yeah, it does become a problem. Yeah, true.
Because technically, we were covered by the First Amendment anyway. So it's, as you say, that act came about from this case in 1990. So I don't know what that act added really to the First Amendment. I don't know if you can summarize the difference, but
I don't know. I don't know why Bill Clinton and the rest brought it in. I think it's to strengthen the First Amendment, I could only imagine.
Yeah, so in 2015, when Mike Pence now brings it into law in Indiana, and you said it was the 20th state to bring it into law. So presumably when it's passed as an act, it's at the federal level, but not every state had implemented it or got it into law.
Yeah, and they make I think states might put into things that are extra, I don't know, but yeah.
So state by state, they're adding it as an amendment. So not every state's accepted it, perhaps, as an amendment. So maybe it's, I don't know, be interested to see the states that have accepted it, were they Republican controlled?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm assuming they were, but I don't know. Okay.
So an example for RFRA being used to discriminate, the Supreme Court case, Master Cake Shop versus Colorado. So anyone remember what that was about? That was brought out in this mess in our movement. That was in 2018, time of the Midnight Cry, and it was called. What?
I don't know what it was called, but it was about them not wanting to make a cake for a homosexual couple.
That's it. Versus Colorado. I think it was called the Civil Rights Commission. Dreadful. Thanks. Who was that? Mercy or Suzanne? Thank you. Yeah, so that was a bakery in Lakewood, Colorado, refused to make a wedding cake for a gay couple. And more recently, I think the same guy discriminated against making the cake for a celebration for a trans woman transitioning. I think he lost that case though, transitioning the woman, the trans woman. He lost that appeal in the court in January 2023 this year. This was due to violating the anti-discrimination law by denying a service to transgender women due to identity. So he won the religious freedom case in 2018 of not having to provide a wedding cake for a gay couple using RFRA, but lost the case regarding trans women using anti-discrimination, trans women doing the cake for the trans woman. using the anti-discrimination law. So does everyone remember that court case, 2018?
Is that with the gay couple?
Yeah, it was about the wedding cake, wasn't it? He didn't want to make a wedding cake for a gay couple. In 2020, yeah. In 2021, this case I'm going to mention, the US Court of Appeal ruled against the case of a lady called Laurie Smith, who, due to her religious belief, was refusing to offer her services to same-sex couples. In 2023, it was in the case came about again, and it was about wedding website services. I think it was in Elder Paminder's article on the Media Broadcast Forum. Anyway, the case in 2023, I'm going to put that down here. This case in 2023 this year, it's called Creative for LLC versus Alanis. It was about a lady called Laurie Smith, as I said, who offers wedding website services. However, she said due to her Christian beliefs, she would decline to offer the services to same-sex couples, as her religious belief is in marriage is she believes that marriage is between one man and one woman. She had said that her state prevented her free speech and to practice her religious beliefs. But I think the oral arguments listened to this case recently, the court's conservatives seemed sympathetic to Smith, who was an evangelical Christian. This is still an ongoing case and was on the list, as I said, that was shared. This case, I'm not sure, I thought I'd mention it because it was on the list brought in, but I think she's mentioned it's to do with her religion, whether she mentions the First Amendment or the Religious Freedom and Restoration Act. I don't know. Any questions?
Yeah.
That's ongoing. Yeah.
The problem with these religious belief challenges is that it's a bit narrow. They're a bit narrow-minded when they just look at it from a religious standpoint.
Yeah.
Because if you apply it for any other thing, and the one thing I just thought of is back in the day, if you were Black, you are not allowed in an establishment and they wouldn't serve you. And somebody could just use that and say, due to my religious beliefs, Black people are not at our level, so, I don't have to deal with them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I say it's a bit narrow the way people want to apply things. They don't think that this can be used further down the line on other minorities.
Yeah. Exactly. Thanks. Thanks, Brian. On the 19th of April this year, a bill was introduced to the Senate and Judiciary to ask for an amendment of RFRA, as it was meant to protect civil rights and otherwise prevent meaningful harmful harm to third parties and minorities and for other purposes, and to stop discrimination and basically put religious freedom over equality. The bill is not a new, this bill I'm talking about is not a new bill, but an old one, and it's being pushed again this year, and it's called the Do No Harm Act. I'm going to put it up here. Right. And shocking. Do No Harm Act. So it was first pushed in 2018, the Do No Harm Act. They wanted to amend RFRA to the Do No Harm Act. And then it was pushed again in 2023. So the Do No Harm Act is basically, as I said, to amend RFRA. Democrats have been pushing it for 5 years now. And it's basically trying to stop those wanting to use RFRA-based rights to discriminate against others. And as I said, RFRA has already been abused. This is why Democrats have been pushing for the Do No Harm Act. And the latest one was on the 19th of April, 2023. So another case that is kind of like abused RFRA was in 2016. Anyone got any questions? I'm talking about the Do No Harm Act now, but they're trying to amend RFRA to the Do No Harm Act because it'd be more, about equality. We wouldn't discriminate. And there was another case right here, 2016. It was called the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. I'm just going to put EOC. Versus RG and GR. This is about funeral home. A federal court in Michigan ruled in favor of a funeral home that fired a transgender employee. Her name was Amy Stevens, due to her gender identity. It held that the employer could use RFRA as a defence to sex discrimination claim under Title VII. So I'm assuming that Amy Stevens used Title VII, which is a federal law that prohibits employment discrimination against anyone of colour, religion, sex, and national origin. So she used Title VII. So this decision was overturned by the Federal Appeals Court, whose decision was appealed to the US Supreme Court. And while that was all going on, the appeal, ACLU, which you all know about, helped Amy make a complaint, and she sued and won for sex discrimination. And that was and then the appeal court came in 2018. The Supreme Court was asked to consider, in 2018, whether it is sex discrimination under federal civil rights statutes to fire someone because the person is transgender. And on June the 15th, 2020, the court ruled it was illegal to fire someone for being LGBTQ. So it looked like this. This was one due to Article 7. It can't be. An employer can't discriminate due to the sex. So I just wanted to mention that case as well. And then that was about abuse of RFRA. I wanted to mention how Trump administration, they also abused RFRA really. Well, basically what they did was in 2017, Trump administration basically what they did is with a decision to permit federally funded child welfare agencies to place their own religious beliefs over the best interest of children who were in care. This is an example of the ways in which RFRA has been increasingly invoked to provide a blank check to discriminate or impose religious beliefs onto others. And Jeff Sessions, you might recall his name. I'll mention him in a minute, but I just want to put Trump's administration. They basically, I think they amended it. So we know that RFRA is intended to provide a shield to exercise of religious freedom, not to be used as a discriminatory sword. For example, another example, in South Carolina, being able to turn away would-be foster or adoptive parents because they are the wrong religion. So
Sorry, that last point, Natalie, sorry, that last point, Trump administration amended the RFRA, and you said Jeff Sessions, what did he actually do there?
So in October 2017, Attorney General Jeff Sessions released a guidance on protections for religious freedom under the federal law. The guidance kind of included an extreme interpretation of RFRA that was said will serve as a blueprint for discrimination. And it was a 25-page memo sent to all executive branch departments. And what they did is they doubled down on distorted understanding of religious freedom, not only allow discrimination in the name of religion, it was also said that it treats the separation of church and state as a mere afterthought. Any questions?
That's okay, thanks.
So Democrats are saying, you know, this illustrates that RFRA it's essential to be amended to the Do No Harm Act. Today, the Department of Justice, DOJ, guidance requires federal agencies to interpret RFRA to go even further, declaring that RFRA too might require an exemption or an accommodation for religious organisations from an anti-discrimination law. So that's quite serious. So even where Congress has not expressly exempted religious organisations, this could open the door for widespread religious-based discrimination against women and LGBTQ, people of minority faiths. Any questions?
I don't know if this question applies, but it's just that I don't know where I watched this video, but it was yesterday about a Satanist having a convention in one of these states in America, and them tearing up the Bible. How would that, you know, when it says like do no harm or anything, how would that imply or apply?
If someone wanted to take them to court using RFRA, if they were tearing other people's Bibles up or stopping them from, you know, stopping them from worshipping the way they wanted to, I suppose they could use it. Yeah. Anyone else got any comments about the question? Move on. So we can see how RFRA has been twisted from a law designed to safeguard the rights of religious minorities into a tool of discrimination. And as I said, this is why Biden's administration, especially is it Kamala Harris, and many others have been saying that Congress can and must act to address the ways in which RFRA has been abused before it gets any worse. And one way to do that would be to pass the Do No Harm Act, which is essential safeguard in the era when we have increasingly seen religious freedom used to license discrimination. It would restore Religious Freedom Restoration Act to its original intent as a protective shield for religious minorities. It would preserve the law's power to protect religious freedom, more importantly, by clarifying that it cannot be used to harm others. For example, trumping laws that protect against discrimination and provide access to healthcare, two areas where we have seen clear abuses like with trans and women's rights. Any comments? So my point about talking to you about RFRA and the Do No Harm Act is due to us seeing, you know, the movements in progress, all, you know, the external events, the Supreme Court cases, the wins of religious freedom we've seen over equality. We saw in 2014, Hobby Lobby. We know that RFRA is still being used today. That's why the Democrats have been pushing it since 2018. And they want it amended. And as we've seen, it is, and it will continue to discriminate against women's rights and LGBTQ rights, especially trans. Any comments? Anything you don't understand?
I just wanted to give a little thought, perhaps, in future, where this might be heading to, given a situation where people keep pushing for their religious views to be above all else.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a place where the world is just encompassed by diseases and natural disasters and all manner of things that harm people? And I'm saying this because, you know, I did believe stuff like this before, that God would send all these natural disasters to punish the earth because of, you know, what's going on earth. So you have a situation where people will start, the religious people start pushing for laws.
Yeah, they did that in 2001, didn't they, Brian?
Yeah.
They said, didn't Jerry Falwell say, you know, I think it was 9/11 was, you know, punishment from God. Let's get back to God.
Exactly. So this could be used then to suppress all things that are not according to religious beliefs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian. If there's no more comments, questions, I'll just summarize, shall I? So we talked about the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which was brought into law in 1993 by an overwhelming bipartisan majority of Congress. It was signed into law by then President Bill Clinton. I went on to discuss how they are using RFRA as a sword to discriminate against minorities and women's rights and LGBTQ. I mentioned how RFRA had been abused by Trump administration and the Attorney General Jeff Sessions. As I mentioned, the important case also in 2014, Hobby Lobby, which was a turning point, as we know, for this movement, and how that win in the Supreme Court undid the 2012 Obamacare's contraceptive mandate, which was about the abortion pill, and them Hobby Lobby not providing it due to religious beliefs in their healthcare. I mentioned how Ruth Bader Ginsburg and her dissent on Hobby Lobby case, and how she expressed her concern that it could lead to RFRA being used to permit discrimination against minority groups. And then I mentioned this year in April, the bill, the bill 1206 Do No Harm Act was introduced to the Senate and Judiciary to ask for RFRA to be amended, as it was meant to protect civil rights and otherwise prevent meaningful harm to third parties, minorities, and for other purposes. I might share that so you can see all the other things that are in the amendment request, the Do No Harm Act. So the Do No Harm Act, as said, is an essential safeguard in the era when we have an increasingly seen religious freedom used to license discrimination. So for me, looking back, I think it's 2014, when we look at all the external events and cases, you see the bigger picture about religious freedom, cases over equality and the teardown of women's rights, trans rights. it's quite clear. It was clear back then. Obviously, we weren't looking, but the Democrats saw it and they were fighting back in 2018 about this RFRA. So now we see how intense it's becoming and how they really are blitzing the courts to pass bills that oppress minorities, women and LGBTQ. And it's happening in other countries all over the world. So that's why I thought I would bring this to your attention, because it's so related to the oppression and the lack of equality for women, LGBTQ and minority foods. Any questions before we close? As long as you can see, like what Brian said, you can see how dangerous this could become if it goes this way. Well, it's already being used from the dates I've put on the board, especially 2014 was a big one. 2018 with the Masterpiece Cake Shop is another one. And we've got one in the course at the moment, Creative LLC versus Alanis, with the wedding website situation. So I'm going to close with prayer. There's no more questions or comments. Care to see you all right? You understand?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Natalie.
You want to kneel with me? I'll say a prayer. Dear Almighty God, we thank you for another blessed Sabbath, a Sabbath where we can worship in peace. We're thankful for the fellowship that we can come together online and talk about the truth and the truths that you have given us with the Midnight Cry message, and how they are continuing to progress in quick speed towards the great test for your people. I pray that you will be with each and every one of us and your people across the world on this Sabbath day, that you will comfort them, give them a refreshing, and help them to understand where we are in Earth's history and put their lives right before it's too late. Thank you for the sunshine, and I thank you for all the blessings you bestow on us, and help us to accept these things deeply into our heart and to practice the truths of the Midnight Cry. In Jesus' name I give thanks and pray. Amen. Thank you, everyone. Sorry it was so quick.
Thank you, Natalie.
You should look up the lemon test as well. I think that was interesting, but I didn't put it in my study.